It's never random. When the crowd keeps throwing stones at the same person, it's revelation. Please think about it. In every community and in every generation, there is always one person who seems to be the target of attacks. And here's the strange thing that history shows. The people who were most strongly against something were also the ones who were most clearly in favor of it. The way that resistance happens is proof of selection. Let's be honest now. It looks like a comedy skit at times. They keep coming at you like you're running it. Let's try to break them. Reality show 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But instead of seeing you fall apart, they have to watch you shine even brighter when you're under stress. That's not a stroke of luck. That's not a coincidence. That's the hand of the Most High putting his mark on you in front of the people who said you wouldn't make it. And here's the twist. The more they attack, the more it becomes clear. You're not just getting through the community's war against you. You're living proof that TMH loves you very much. Your attacks became the sign that you were liked. What was meant to discredit you, shame you, and destroy you turned out to be the loudest proof that you were chosen. People wouldn't have noticed you if no one had ever said anything bad about you. If no one had ever tried to bring you down, no one would have cared about how high you were going to go. People tried to bring you down, but in the end, they drew more attention to you than you could have on your own. When people come together against someone, they show what that person has. They show the danger they think they are in. They show their own fear. That something bigger is going on in the life of the person they are targeting. That's why your attacks weren't just random events. They were messages. Every time they plotted against you, whispered about you, or dragged your name into something, they were putting up posters of how important you were without even knowing it. They became the free marketers of your future. It's interesting that the Most High let it happen in front of everyone. He didn't tell them to be quiet at first. He let them speak. He let them go. He let them make their case against you. Then he made sure that everything went wrong. People saw the pattern in the end. The same people are being attacked over and over again, but they never eat, destroy, or erase them. People who are watching can't understand how you can survive like that unless there's a higher power protecting you. Their attempts to hurt you turn into the megaphone that made you more popular. They wanted the community to laugh at you, but instead, they noticed how strong you were in a way that couldn't be explained. They wanted to get rid of you, but you became too important. They wanted your story to end in shame, but the more they pushed, the more it became about how God saved you. So yes, their attacks were mean, unfair, and tiring, but at the same time, they were the best proof you had. They made you look good without meaning to. They spread your name farther than you could have done it on your own, even though they didn't mean to, and without realizing it. They showed everyone watching that you were not just another target. You were a vessel favored and protected by the Most High. So, they showed that you were worth going after. People don't want to admit it, but that's the truth. No one puts their energy into things that don't matter. People don't get together to plan against someone who isn't a threat. They would have left you alone if you were just like everyone else, if you didn't have anything special about you, or if you weren't marked by something bigger. But the fact that they keep circling, talking, and trying to trip you up is the best sign that you have something they can ignore. They think that their attacks show how weak you are, but in reality, their attacks show how heavy you are. To get people to fight back, you need power. To make people jealous, you need to have power. It takes light to get people to pay attention to you in a way that makes them uneasy. Their obsession with you is a sign of love. They are admitting that you are not just another person in the crowd without saying it out loud. You have something special about you, and the deeper truth is that their anger isn't directed at you personally. It's directed at what you stand for. You are a reminder that you can't buy favor. You can stop fate. And some people are chosen whether others like it or not. They don't like that reminder because it shows how empty their own efforts are. They might not know why they want to fight you so badly, but it's because your presence shakes up their ideas of control. Every word they've said against you, every time they've tried to put you on the sidelines, and every time they've tried to make you doubt yourself has shown that you're carrying something heavy enough to make them uncomfortable. Think about it. They wouldn't have to fight you so hard if you weren't great. They wouldn't see you as dangerous if the Most High hadn't marked you. So when they go after you, they're not trying to make you look bad. They're trying to prove you. They're confirming that you're chosen, favored, and protected in ways they can't explain. They may never say it out loud, but their actions speak louder than words. You are worth all the trouble it takes to fight, and in the end, that fight doesn't show your weakness. It shows how afraid they are of what you will become. Free. Their refusal to comply became your revelation. It wasn't just that people were mean or hard to deal with. The opposition you faced showed you who you are and what you carry. If they hadn't pushed back, you might never have found out how strong you really are, how far you can go, or how much you care about them. What they tried to use to hurt you turned out to be a mirror that showed you parts of yourself you hadn't seen before. It brings things to light when people stand up to you. It makes you look deeper and stand up straighter. It makes you look for things inside yourself that you would have left alone if life had been easier. Their resistance became the place where your strength had to speak for itself. And once you see resilience, you can't hide it again. You left fights that they thought you would lose. And by doing this, you found out the truth that you are not supported by luck, but by God's help. Resistance has shown you that the hand of the Most High is stronger than the hand of your enemies, that His purpose is greater than their plans, and that outside forces cannot take away what He has put in you. You didn't just live through their attacks, you learned from them. You saw with your own eyes that favor isn't just a word people use. It's a shield that protects you even when everything is against you. The more they tried to stop you, the more you realized that your path wasn't about making them happy or proving anything to them. It was about following the path that had already been set for you. Resistance burned away false hopes and made things clear. It made the truth stand out from the noise. It showed you that you don't need their permission to move on, because you already got the only approval that matters from above. So even though they thought their resistance would slow you down, it actually made you more aware. It helped you see who you really are. They thought they were breaking you, but they really made you stronger. Their opposition showed that you were meant for more, and through it, you learned the unshakable truth. You are chosen, protected, and unstoppable in the job you have been given. For their weapons became proof that they were guilty. The things they made to hurt, you ended up showing their true colors and proving your worth. They thought they were smart by lying, setting traps in secret, and spreading lies. They were lying about you behind your back and making up stories to make you look bad. But they didn't think about the fact that every weapon they raised had fingerprints on it, which showed that they were corrupt. Every plan they made turned into a record of their intentions. And in the end, it was clear proof that showed the world who they really were. What they meant to do to ruin your credibility actually made your case stronger. Every false accusation became a public display of their lies. Every time they tried to frame you, it showed how desperate they were. Every plan they made left behind a paper trail of their obsession. Their weapons didn't kill you. They made a case against themselves. They unknowingly proved your innocence and showed that you weren't the problem. They were. That's how justice from God works. The Most High doesn't just keep you safe from the arrow. He changes the story so that the arrow itself proves that you were targeted for no reason. The very effort they put into ruining you shows how strong and favored you are. Not only did their weapons fail, but they also showed, and in the end, being exposed was stronger than getting back at someone. Revenge would have silenced them for a short time, but exposure made sure their corruption could no longer hide. The best part is that you didn't have to fight dirty or play by their rules. You didn't have to go along with what they wanted. You didn't have to do anything. Time and truth did the work for you. Their receipts kept piling up until it was clear to everyone that the person they attacked was innocent and the people swinging the weapons were guilty. That's why they can't sit still. That's why they don't get why you're still standing. When their credibility is falling apart, they fell into every trap they set. Every weapon they picked up was used as evidence against them. And every time you tried and failed, it gave people another reason to believe your covering wasn't natural. It was divine. They tried to kill you, but all they did was break the illusion they had made for themselves. 5. You didn't have to shout louder than them. You outlived them. They used their time and energy to make up stories, change the facts, and paint pictures of you that weren't true. They were loud, persistent, and determined to make other people believe their version of you. But noise doesn't last long, while truth does. You didn't waste your time trying to match their volume or fight every rumor. You kept moving, standing, and rising instead. And that alone said more than anything they ever said. Survival is proof in and of itself. Every day you get up and keep going is proof that what they say is not true. If what they said about you were true, you would have already fallen. If their stories were true, you wouldn't have had the strength or chance to keep going. But the fact that you're still here, still standing, and still walking in favor means that their accusations don't matter. It was meant to be this way by the Most High. He let their voices run wild for a while, but your strength had the last word. People remember consistency, not chaos. In the end, they remember who stayed, not who yelled the loudest. And even though their words faded into the background, it was clear that you were still rising. Your life was proof that they were lying. That's why being quiet helped you. You didn't need to say anything back. You didn't have to prove yourself to people who were set on misunderstanding you. You just had to keep going, and by doing so, you made them stop talking. The proof that their words had no power is the best way to disarm a liar. Your ability to keep going won out over their noise in the end. What they thought would kill you ended up being what made you stronger. You quietly built a record of survival, resilience, and favor that couldn't be denied, while they were themselves out with schemes and slander. That's what makes them different from you. Their voices depended on hurting someone else, but your rise depended only on staying true to the covering that was already on your life. And that's why you didn't have to yell louder than them. You just had to last longer. Ziggs, favor doesn't argue, it shows. You never had to argue with anyone about whether you were chosen, protected, or set apart. You never had to explain why things worked out for you in ways that didn't seem to make sense on paper. That's because real favor doesn't waste time trying to change people's minds. It shows up in results that can't be denied. It shows up in doors that open when people said they would stay locked. It shows up in survival that no attack could stop. The Most High made it so that your life was proof of what happened. People around you may have fought, talked bad about you, or doubted you, but in the end, they couldn't explain away the results. They couldn't figure out why you kept getting up when they tried to bury you. They didn't know why what hurt other people didn't hurt you. They couldn't explain why every time they tried to stop you, it ended up being the setting for your success. And since they couldn't explain it, they had to see it. That's what divine favor can do. It skips over debate completely. Words are cheap, but results speak for themselves. They wanted to keep you in endless arguments, but favor wouldn't let them have that. Favor just did what they said they would do. It put you in situations you didn't ask for. It gave you chances you didn't ask for. It helped you get through storms that you couldn't handle on your own. And all of that was stronger than any defense you could have made. Your results showed who had picked you. They weren't just victories. They were messages. Each one had the Most High's signature on it, stamped in a way that no one could take credit for it and no enemy could erase it. People whisper for that reason. That's why they have trouble understanding your life. It's not because you made a good case. It's because the results already showed that your case was true. You relied on something bigger than noise and slander, demonstration, and that show is what really shut them up, more than any words could. Favor doesn't argue, led, or tried to change the minds of those who don't believe. It just shows, and by showing, it makes it clear that God has a plan for your life. 7. They thought that being strong meant being weak. They thought you were weak because you could handle pressure, but that was actually proof that you were getting stronger. They thought you were weak because you didn't fight back the way they thought you would or give up when things got tough. But being strong is never weak. Endurance is the secret language of strength. Endurance says, no matter how much you want me to, I won't break. Their plan was to pull you through storms. They thought that the constant stress, gossip, setbacks, and betrayals would eventually wear you down. They thought that pain would take away your sense of purpose. But storms don't just destroy, they also clean. What you went through took away the things that weren't real, burned away the things that weren't needed, and made you sharper, clearer, and stronger than before. What they meant to break you actually made you stronger. Like fire makes gold stronger. They thought you were weak because you were quiet and persistent. But what was really happening was that your anointing was getting stronger. You were stretched by endurance. It taught you to be patient when people were mean to you. It helped you become more discerning, so you could see people and situations for what they really are. You learned that no one else could help you through those storms, which made you depend more on the Most High. Your spiritual power grew every time you said no to giving up. Your anointing got louder every time you kept going when it would have been easier to quit. They couldn't see it, but the storms they put you through made what you carried heavier and more real. What was supposed to drain you ended up feeding you. The attacks that should have made you quiet made your voice stronger. They thought endurance meant being tired, but it really meant changing. You didn't just live through the weight. You changed into a new person who they couldn't put into a box or control. So, yes, they thought that being strong meant being weak, but that mistake cost them. By the time they figured out that your strength was your endurance, it was too late. They thought you would never get there, but you had already crossed the line. You were already at a level where their storms didn't matter anymore. They thought you were weak, but that was the very thing that kept you from being broken. The more they came together, the more they broke apart. At first, it seemed scary. Groups are forming, alliances are being made, and people are coming together to bring you down. They believed that having a lot of people would give them power. They thought that the more noise their crowd made, the more believable their lies would sound. But they forgot about a universal law. Anything built on lies is already falling apart from the inside. And the more pressure it tries to put on the outside, the faster it falls apart on the inside. Their partnerships weren't based on anything real. They weren't together because of the truth. They were together because of anger. They weren't standing on honesty. They were standing on jealousy. And relationships like that never last. They fall apart because lies don't last forever. When the truth comes into the room, lies start to eat themselves alive. That's why the very events that were supposed to overwhelm you fell apart one by one. You didn't have to take them apart yourself. Their disunity showed itself. Their motives were at odds with each other, and their contradictions came to light. People who come together out of anger and jealousy, not love or justice, will eventually turn on each other. And while they were busy running away, you were still standing, untouched, covered, and moving forward with the strength of divine truth. This is what favor does. It lets your enemies gather long enough to show themselves, but it never lets them get stronger. They talk a lot, walk in groups, and plan things out in circles. But no matter how well they seem to be organized, it all falls apart over time. They run out of energy, their lies don't match up, and their unity breaks down. And every time it happens, it shows how different what they build is from what you stand on. Because the truth is unshakable. It doesn't need any numbers to back it up. It doesn't need plans to stay alive. It stands because it is rooted in the Most High. That's why you're still around. Their plans fell apart, their crowds broke up, and their alliances fell apart. But you kept going up, not because you fought harder than they did, but because they couldn't copy what you were made of. The fact that they scattered showed that you were never outnumbered, and that God was with you from the start. Their anger was a reflection of their jealousy. They would never say it, but their actions show that it's true. They were angry at you for no reason. It wasn't about being offended, betrayed, or even misunderstanding. It was about thinking about it. They saw everything they secretly wanted to be when they looked at you. Light, strength, favor, and resilience. They chose to be bitter instead of inspired. Their anger was just jealousy that they were hiding behind anger. Envy is bad because it doesn't just look at what you have. It looks at who you are. You are what they could have had but didn't. You show the bravery they never had the discipline to develop. You are the favor they can't make, no matter how much they plan or pretend. And they can't stand being next to someone like you, because it makes them feel like their own efforts are pointless. They turn that truth into hate instead of dealing with it. That's why they were so angry. It wasn't just jealousy over things that didn't matter. It was more profound. It was because your existence makes them face their own weaknesses. You are living proof that the Most High raises up people He chooses, not people who people like. And that truth shook them up because it reminded them that no amount of scheming, lying, or acting could win you the favor you have so easily. What they hated about you was what they wanted for themselves. The peace that comes from knowing you're special. The courage that comes from living in truth. The strength that comes from being protected by God. When they hid you, they weren't really fighting you. They were fighting against the image of what they could never be. Their anger was their jealousy yelling back at them. So, even though they tried to make others think you were the problem, all they really did was show how they felt. Their anger didn't make you look bad. It showed who you really are. It showed that you had something they couldn't deny, something they couldn't ignore no matter how hard they tried. And in the end, their anger didn't stop you. It only showed the world that you are everything they want to be but will never be. 10. Their curse showed how weak they were. No matter how much they talk, how many rituals they do, or how many secret plans they make, the truth is that if they really had power over you, their first attempt would have been their last. You wouldn't be here if what they said had real power. The fact that you are still alive is proof that their so-called power was never real. They put themselves in danger every time they tried and failed. Every curse they sent that didn't hit was proof that their strength was fake. They wanted to be seen as untouchable, feared, and in charge. But nothing shows weakness faster than failing over and over again. It became clearer the more they tried. They didn't have power over you. They just hated you. And anger has never been enough to beat someone chosen by the Most High. It's funny in a way. They thought their curses would make you smaller, but they actually made them smaller. They hurt their credibility, their power, and their reputation. People began to see a pattern. The person they cursed kept standing, growing, and doing well, while the people who cursed them kept falling apart. What they thought would show off their strength ended up showing off how empty they were. And this is where the truth hurts the most. You weren't standing because you were able to. You were standing because they never had the right to tell you what to do in the first place. You were never under their control when it came to your life, your future, or your protection. They were hitting something they could never touch. The Most High let them try to hurt you, but not to hurt you. Instead, He wanted to show you and everyone else that their threats were useless against divine favor. In the end, their curses didn't work, not because they made a mistake, but because they never had real power in the first place. The more they hit, the more they proved it. The more they swore, the more obvious their own weakness became. And the fact that you're still alive, still breathing, and still moving forward is the strongest proof that their power was never real, and their curses only made it more clear. They were forced to be witnesses. That part hurts them the most. The Most High could have stopped them, moved them out of the way, or even gotten rid of them completely. But He didn't. He left them right where they were, not because you needed their approval, but because your eyes had to be clear. They had to see it for themselves. They had to watch the very thing they promised would never happen in real time. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. This was God's plan. It wasn't a mistake that they were in your audience. They meant to be there. Every time you got better, every time you broke through, and every time you survived was another reminder that their words meant nothing and their curses had no power. They were not participants. They were spectators who had to watch the Most High's hand work in ways they couldn't deny. That's why they got more and more angry as you rose. You didn't just win. They couldn't get away from it. They couldn't change the story because they were in the middle of it. They couldn't deny your favor, because it was clear to them every time you overcame another challenge. They weren't just watching, they were unwilling witnesses who were testifying against themselves. And here's the smart part. Having them there made your testimony go further. If you only saw your rise, people might have thought it was just luck or an exaggeration. But because they saw it and tried to stop it but couldn't, your favor became clear proof. Their silence now means something, because after so much opposition, silence is an admission of defeat. So, the Most High didn't take them away because he needed their help. He wanted their testimony. He wanted them to sit in the audience, to show that no enemy is stronger than his will. He wanted them to understand the difference between what people plan and what God wants. And that's why their punishment isn't just what they lost. It's also what they have to watch. Your rise, which they swore would never happen, happening right in front of their eyes. 12. Your isolation was the setting for your fame. They thought they were burying you when they pushed you out, left you out, and tried to erase your presence from the circle. They thought that by cutting you off from the group, your name and power would fade away. What they didn't know was that being alone doesn't make someone less important. It makes them more important. By pushing you away, they got rid of the noise and distractions and made the perfect setting for your favor to be seen in full view. The Most High sometimes lets people be alone because they can't be recognized in a crowd. In a crowd, your light gets blocked, hidden, or watered down. But when you're alone, your light has no competition, so it shines in its most basic form. Your enemies thought that being alone was a punishment, but it was actually a way to get ready. It put you exactly where you needed to be so that no one could mistake your favor for anything other than divine. And even though they whispered that you were done, the truth was that you were just getting started. The very thing they were celebrating was the stage for your reveal. When you stepped forward again, lo, it wasn't into their circle. It was onto a platform they couldn't control, one that was made just for showing off the hand of the Most High on your life. Because there was no crowd to hide you, their effort to do so made you more visible. That's why it means something when you recognize someone. They didn't give it to them. It came out anyway. They can take credit for your success. And they can act like they didn't see it coming because they made it possible. Because they left you out. You were in the perfect spot for your favor to be clear. So, what they meant by erasure turned into elevation. Your loneliness wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It wasn't a punishment. It was proof. They thought that pushing you away would make you quiet forever, but instead, it gave your favor its own stage where no one could distract you, interface with you, or fake your voice. 13. The storm they made put you in the spotlight. They thought they were ruining you when they dragged your name through the mud, told lies, and tried to bury your reputation under lies and exaggerations. They thought the storm of lies would drown you out. But storms don't just make noise. They bring people to you. The chaos they made ended up drawing more attention to you than you could have drawn to yourself. Every word they said and every rumor they spread made your name go farther. People who didn't know you before now do, not because you looked for them, but because your enemies told people about you for free. What they meant to humiliate you turned into a form of publicity that they couldn't take back. People were not only interested in the storm, but they also wanted to know why you were still standing in the middle of it. Your interest became the center of attention. That's how the Most High works. He lets storms show who his chosen people are instead of destroying them. You might have gone unnoticed in calm weather, but when the storm hit, everyone looked your way. People thought they would see a collapse, but instead they saw strength, grace, and support from God. The very thing your enemies tried to use to make fun of you turned out to be the thing that proved you right. They paid more attention to you than your fans ever could. And here's the funny part. They couldn't control what happened because they started the storm. They wanted you to be in the background, but the storm made you stand out. They wanted to erase you, but the storm made people remember your name even more. They wanted to break you, but instead they showed you to an audience that saw your strength as proof of something bigger. Their storm became your stage, their noise became your announcement, and their anger became your recognition. So, the storm they made didn't bring you down, it brought you in. It was the tool the Most High used to show you off without your enemies knowing they were helping. What they made to hurt you turned out to be the very thing that showed you off, making it clear to everyone watching that you are chosen, elevated, and protected by something they could never compete with. 13. You won because they lost. The result was already known from the start. No matter how many plans they made, lies they told, or traps they set, it didn't matter. The Most High had already sealed the script.